Hello and welcome to this edition of In the State House with State Senator Jason Lewis and State Representative Michael Day. My name's Alan McDonald, and this is another opportunity to hear what's happening in the State House. This particular show is happening at the weekend when the state legislature is coming to conclusion on the state budget for fiscal 2017, which starts July in 2016 and goes through June of 2017. Senator Lewis, Representative Day, it's just great to have you here again.
Thank you, Alan. Good to be back with you.
Yeah, always great to be back, Al. Appreciate it.
This is the start of a new budget, so there's a lot of work I know that goes into that. There are a lot of issues that you'll be dealing with this weekend, too. What are the headlines that you might feel that the citizens of Winchester would really tune into?
So the budget process each year starts in January and then wraps up now. What we're doing right now is the governor did veto several hundred actually items in the budget that we are now considering overrides. And governors do typically issue vetoes in some areas, but this was a particularly large number. And it ranges from funding for special education to the arts, the Mass Cultural Council, to many local priorities. So we are working hard to look carefully at those and hopefully continue to override some of those vetoes. Overall, the budget does increase funding for education for our schools and local aid as well. Substance abuse and mental health treatment and prevention is very important in this budget. We did face some challenges with revenue projected for the year because of capital gains taxes coming in a bit lower than expected. So we did have to make some adjustments late in the process, which was a challenge. But overall, we have a budget that we believe is fiscally sound. It's balanced, and we at least some areas in the budget we've been able to make some new investments.
I think some of the news this week was no sales tax holiday this year because of the revenue shortfall. In some respects, shortfall against estimates because of that.
Yeah, we had just on the process-wise, the governor sends the first draft over. The House then makes its budget. We send it over to the Senate, does the same thing, and then we conference the two versions together before we send a final budget off to the governor. In between the House and Senate passing their versions while the conference committee was meeting, that's when the temporary floor fell out on revenue projections. You had Brexit, the British vote to exit the EU that caused a lot of turbulence in the markets. And as a result, we ended up dropping about $400 million out of the budget in spending cuts in between our budget, the Senate budget, and getting it off to the governor. So we sent it off. We made those cuts. As Senator Lewis said, we've maintained very high priority issues for us, which again is local aid, funding for our schools, substance abuse funding, education funding, special ed, healthcare funding as well. So I thought we did a great job of chopping quite a bit of money, but still maintaining our priorities. Sent it off to the governor, as Senator Lewis said. About 300 vetoes came back, which surprised me. As coming down the stretch of my first term. In the first budget we didn't have nearly that many. So we took a look at it, and last weekend we overrode about 100 or so vetoes, mostly in the social services area, special education circuit breaker, disability housing, study groups. We restored funding for Down syndrome research, for HIV research, things of that sort. Very important programs. And then we're taking them up again this weekend, which will be a nice long 48-hour stretch on veto overrides, as well as trying to finish up some of the other major pieces of legislation coming through now.
Well, I know you both were really active on what I guess would be a jobs creation bill or economic development, but that over time, as the kinds of investments that come through on job creation should help on the revenue side as well, I would think. Huh?
That's a piece of legislation, as Rep. Day mentioned, that the House and Senate have passed. It's like an economic development bill that is now there's a few differences between us that are being reconciled, and we expect that to be finished up this weekend. And that legislation, for example, recapitalizes some very important investment funds that the state has, like the Mass Works program, which provides state grants for infrastructure development, particularly where there's the potential to attract private investment. So, for example, here in Winchester, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this, we're very exciting. We're going to be rebuilding the Winchester Center Commuter Rail Station, which will unlock the Waterfield parcel of land, which is a parking lot now, for redevelopment. That's an area, for example, we're targeting for a Mass Works grant to help with some of the infrastructure. Okay. So this bill that we're hopefully will finish this weekend will recapitalize that fund, and that could have a direct benefit to the town of Winchester as well as many other communities.
Yeah, it's really, to me, it's one of the more important bills we're passing because it's going to be a job retraining bill as well. So for individuals who may find themselves in a line of work that doesn't have much of a future, you've got the power plant closing. We've moved away from coal-fired power plants. They're all closing down. So folks that had built a career in that line of work suddenly find themselves in their 40s or 50s and really don't have any place to turn. So this legislation will provide new job training opportunities, private-public partnerships for industries that need workers, high-tech manufacturing, to really bring in the educational system in hand in glove really with some of these industries, and allow folks to retrain themselves, to get retraining opportunities as well, to reposition themselves so that we can compete better. It's really going to, I think, amplify what we've been working on in the legislature as far as bringing the economy forward and preparing ourselves for the next step.
Another piece of legislation that we've been working hard on that also I believe strongly will contribute to innovation and economic growth and job creation in Massachusetts is dramatically scaling back non-compete agreements. Many people watching at home may not know what these are, but they basically are agreements that many employees are forced to sign when they join a company. This is very true in the high-tech industry, but increasingly in other industries. And if when they choose to leave, or even if they're forced to leave, but like laid off, for example, they are prevented from going to work for another company that's considered to be a competitor, and that can be for a year or for 2 years, which can be devastating to somebody's career and their ability to earn income. Sure. So California, for example, has completely banned the use of non-competes, and obviously we know how strong their high-tech economy is. So we've been pushing to try to do this in Massachusetts for some time, and we have, again, great news. The House and the Senate have passed bills doing that. The Senate went a little further than the House, so now we're just reconciling those bills. But if we're able to accomplish that, then that will get wrapped up this coming weekend.
Yeah, that's
a big deal.
That is a big deal. In my prior life, I did a lot of work in employment law and a lot of work in non-compete law, and they're intense. They cost a lot of money for both the individuals and the companies, and a significant body of case law has developed over the years in this area. Senator Lewis had mentioned this would really update our law that has been touched way too long and codify a lot of the case law that's developed. And so practitioners in the area really know where the ins and outs are in this body of law. For example, you can't have somebody turfed from their job, their career, for 3 years, right? Wow. But the current law is wide open. So this will really codify that it's a 1 year sitting out period.
Hopefully 1 year maximum.
1 year max. 1 year max. Potentially
maybe even
lesser than that. The Senate went lesser than that. But also in Massachusetts, again, talking about leading the nation, both chambers have built in a garden leave provision, whereby if you're agreeing that you're not going to be able to pursue your livelihood in this area, the company in exchange is going to have to pay you to sit out. Some sort of consideration. Senate has a different provision than we do, but we both built in this provision, which is one of a kind in the country. We're never going to get to, I shouldn't say never, but I think it'll be challenging for Massachusetts to get to the California level of just eviscerating and doing away with non-competes. And I see both sides, having been on both sides of that. But the business community is actually on board with the non-compete reform because, again, it's going to provide certainty for both the business community as well as the individuals. And you have things like there's some companies down the south that are coming up here, fast food places, and they are locking up, line cooks from saying you can't go to a competitor. So I can't leave this Jimmy John's, I think is the name of it's a sandwich place. It's a Subway type of place. And they're locking up folks that are making sandwiches and saying you can't go to a competitor for a year.
Real terrible.
I mean, crazy stuff.
Because I think when this whole non-compete started, it was with the tech companies and the financial services companies, and of course now it's throughout industry. So
so this'll do away with that type of a non-compete and just say right off the board you can't enforce those types of, because again, there's no reason to have some individual not be able to go pursue their livelihood. When you're talking about intellectual property and confidential information of the company, that's where you get some tension there. But I mean, turkey's turkey. you're not going to be able to really keep the guy on the line.
I don't think there's any proprietary.
No. So really outrageous stuff. But on the silver lining is it spurred us into really jump-starting this legislation to come through.
We're going to be able to protect the proprietary knowledge of the Hamburg sauce.
That's right.
The secret sauce, yeah.
Be careful.
Is it a square patty, a circle patty? What are we doing?
So when you're dealing with these human resource issues, employment issues, where does the pay equity issue fit? Because I know that's a major national issue, but it is at the state level as well. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, again, Massachusetts getting out in front. I mean, we passed the first pay equity statute in the history of America ages ago and never touched it since. Women on average on a comparable job to a man make in Massachusetts 82 cents to every dollar that a male brings home for the same job, same hours, same work. And so we've happily passed through both chambers and now are presenting to the governor. He's going to sign on Monday the most comprehensive pay equity statute in the country when it goes into effect. It's going to, again, we've taken, I think, a very measured approach to the problem by building in some safe harbor measures for companies to really look inward first and see what they're doing with their workforce and make corrective actions if they see that they are indeed underpaying their female workforce. It's basically going to, a few provisions, and I'll let Senator Lewis detail some of them as well, but you can't ask salary history during job interviews anymore. Right? So what used to happen was you'd have a woman coming out and she'd be making $15,000 a year, and I might be willing to offer her 45, obviously low numbers. And I'd ask you, well, what are you making? 15. Oh, I'm going to offer you 20 then. You know, and it's not going to catch up to where they really should be. And that'll help the male applicant as well, because now you're not going to be able to get into that area. But it's really going to go a long ways towards evening up the playing field.
I think this is very, very exciting and very important. It's been, as you said, Alan, national conversation about this, both Democrats and Republicans. And so to have Massachusetts really take action here, there have been folks working on this for many years, and this is the culmination now. And the bill is bipartisan support. It was unanimous in the House
Industry
Senate.
Support
The industry, business associations like the Business Roundtable and others have, had some concerns over the years. And as Mike pointed out, we did want to give. Most companies want to do the right thing, of course, and we want to give them organizations a good opportunity to review their salary data, take a transparent look at it, and move in the right direction, not face lawsuits just because of this new law. But we do want to push in the right direction. So I think it's important. And what the bill really does that was lacking from the original 1940s statute, which where we were, as Rep. Day said, the first in the nation, is we really made the effort to define what comparable work is, because that's where there's been a gray area over the years. And it's not easy to define, but that's where we worked hard with a lot of different stakeholders to come up with a definition. And frankly, to say where are there cases where people, a man and a woman, who otherwise are in equal settings, could be paid different amounts. What would be like, for example, if they're salespeople, and one person is getting more results, is performing better, obviously they should be paid more. So
we obviously also built into that point seniority issues. If I've been there for 15 years, of course, I should be making more than somebody who comes in at the same level, a sales accountant, or wherever it's going to be. So those provisions are built in to recognize legitimate differences in the workforce and legitimate differences in performance. So I think it does strike the right balance. And again, Senator Lewis had mentioned, we got almost wholesale buy-in from the business community on this end. So it's not one of these, you always hear some folks thundering away about we're getting this pushed on us by the state. Sure. This was a bill that really brought in all the stakeholders and got universal buy-in and just about universal support as well. I think it passed both chambers.
I think it was unanimous in the end, and it took a lot of pushing to get there. We didn't get there overnight, and a lot of listening and hard work. But I do think, what I've heard is that without passage of any bill, we wouldn't get to pay equity in Massachusetts until I think the middle of the century, or just given current trends. And now with this legislation, we will get there much, much faster.
And it will be a model for the country. I mean, you're already
very important to
federal
families.
Government looking in and making calls to see how we got there and what we're doing here.
And we've made a lot of progress. There's no question about that. And thinking back, because I'm a little older, but it seems to me when I first had this issue come by my site,
Mhm.
it was about 59 cents to the dollar
Mhm.
rather than 82 cents. So it is not 1-to-1 yet, but you
Yeah.
can see the progress.
Yes.
And there are a lot of reasons built into that aren't maybe intentional even,
Right.
which is why I think the business community is now on board because
Yeah.
obviously it makes a lot of sense to
Yeah.
be drawing the talent when you find yourself on the business side, not recruiting the talent as well because your differential is too much.
Mhm.
That's the number one thing that turns
Right.
around.
Well, we want to attract
the
the
problem.
talented women and men,
Yep.
and we want to retain them.
Yep.
You know,
that's
and we
good.
want to
And this
manage
is
through. When someone has to take a pregnancy leave or other family or medical reasons, and not have that as a result. Earn a lower income going forward.
and it applies across the board, governments included. So this is a private and public sector law that's going to apply with equal force, which I think is great.
Mhm.
Think of the things that have really affected more in the recent news too. The public records law. I know that was something, Senator Lewis, that you were particularly active in, but we had some 40 years or so go by without any adjustment. And of course, things have happened in 4+ decades with electronic records and
Right.
more easily accessible. But tell us a little bit about, because that was quite a bit of news during the course of
Yes,
this year.
I was very pleased. I was proud to be the lead sponsor of that particular legislation in the Senate. I had worked on it when I was in the House, and Rep. Day was very helpful with this bill in helping to champion it in the House as well this session. But it has to do with, I believe, a very fundamental issue, which is that our government should be transparent. That if citizens, the media, whomever wants to get access to information in the government, whether it's in this local town or city or the state government, as long as that's information that's not confidential, Social Security records or things that truly should be confidential, they should be able to get access to that information without delay, without unreasonable cost or other burdens. And as you said, Alan, the public records law in our state was written in the 1970s. We didn't even have electronic records. And we had fallen way behind other states, so we often get a failing grade when it comes to access to public information. Literally, we get an F in national studies, and that's a shame and a stain on our state because we pride ourselves on being leaders. So we pushed hard for this legislation. Again, took a lot of work because there are a lot of details that you have to sort through. And you, for example, with small towns, they do have very limited resources. They may not even have a full-time town clerk. So you do have to figure out how do you what's a reasonable amount of time to respond to a request? When can charges, fees be assessed? If there are actual, if you need a legal time, for example, before responding to a request, if you need a lawyer's help, things like that. So we did, that went to a conference committee, and I had an opportunity to serve on that conference committee, which was exciting. And then the governor did a signing in his office a few months ago, and it was good to see that we're now bringing Massachusetts finally into where it should be, its rightful place, I think, among the states that really have strong, transparent, and accountable state governments and public records laws.
It's a huge step forward for government trust, government transparency, as Senator Lewis said. Not to beat the horse, but 1970s was a whole different technologically. Never mind how we treat government, how we look at government, from where we are now. And as Senator Lewis said, we were getting an F. The worst state in the country on public records, transparency. These are our, if you look at it, these are our records, right? We're taxpayers. This is our government of the people. And the struggles you would have in trying to get a public record from a given town or state entity were enormous. The cost was prohibitive for most private citizens to try to request a copy. Some places we'd heard of, they were charging $2 or $3 for a copy of a page, per page. So you're asking for a transcript, and it's a 300-page transcript. Now you're looking at a $900 bill, if I did my math right, before you get that transcript, right? And so you're looking, you're saying $3. This isn't a mimeograph machine we're running over anymore. Right. These are electronic documents, and so I really applaud Senator Lewis. I was happy to be a co-sponsor in the House side, but Senator Lewis taking it up in the Senate and sitting on that conference committee to iron out I think they weren't all that great, but there were differences between the House and the Senate. And the final product is really a bill that we can be proud of. Got buy-in from the municipalities that their costs weren't going to be absorbed and just some kind of gadfly tanking a town by sending in an incredible amount of public records requests and then seeking penalties. But on the flip side, making us much more transparent, finding out so that the normal citizen can say, how did we arrive at this? What's going on in this government decision here? And really opening it up for transparency's sake, but also for the public to be able to find out what's going on.
But you really do get a full range of issues. I mean, from the social side to the administrative management side. So that was good work on that. And you have in front of you a number of things that are capturing public attention. And one of them, if I could ask you what your thoughts are, what's happening in the ride-sharing area, the transportation networking companies or whatever it's called. But that's getting a lot of public attention now in the competition for ride-sharing. And the legislature's in the situation where you have to deal with it to help out with the regulatory side.
Yeah, and this is, again, one of these issues we're trying to hammer out the differences between the House and the Senate right now and hopefully bring this bill forward. But Uber and Lyft are the ride-sharing, the kind of the next generation on-demand taxis, for lack of a better term, that you can order through your phone. It's really revolutionized the ride-sharing industry, the car-for-hire industry.
Yeah.
And the speed in which it took off and really captured a huge percentage of the market was stunning to me. And government really needed to step up in a quicker way, because you had things. It's an unregulated industry right now, and you have safety concerns, fairness concerns for the public. Their surge pricing allowed. At some stages you hear during a public health crisis, they would 200-300 times what the normal price would be, because this is such demand. And the argument on one side is that's capitalism, and that's how they do it, and the other side is public need and public safety. But the safety pieces to me were very important. Background checks for drivers that the Hackney industries have to go through, so who's driving this car, who's picking up the public for hire. And so both the House and the Senate have some very good and strong public safety provisions in there. But it's striking a balance between allowing this new industry to really continue to grow. And frankly, I think it's going to be a great public service for us. You've got seniors who can access this now at a much cheaper rate. You've got the towns can take advantage of this when you're stranded from public mass transportation. And so it's something that can really be a public good. But I think we were, and hopefully we'll get through the finish line on regulating this industry in a sensible way that still allows it to grow and thrive, but has sensible safety checks in place.
Yeah, it's Rep. Day gave a great summary of the issue here, but it's an example of this is just whole new world, which is the sharing economy, or I guess it's also called the gig economy. And we're seeing it with sharing in transportation. We're seeing it with sharing in lodging as well. Places like Airbnb and others. And they're great. They add great new convenience for many people. They, in many cases, are new sources of income for people who can be their own boss. And so that's all good. At the same time, we do have a responsibility, and our most important responsibility in government is public health and public safety. And if you get in a car, an Airbnb driver picks you up, you want to know that driver doesn't have a criminal record. You want to know that the vehicle has been inspected. Insured. You want to know it has the level of insurance if you get in an accident. You want to be fair to the taxi industry that has gone through and done certain things and had certain reasonable expectations. So that's the balancing act, and I think we've struck a good balance on that. We'll encourage these companies to continue to grow in Massachusetts, and but also ensure public safety. So, I'm glad we've acted on that, and I think we'll have to do more, because I think other industries which are also in the sharing economy, we're going to have to, like it or not, we're going to have to wade into those as well.
Kind of a blueprint for us moving forward of where to strike that balance between commerce and public safety and public good.
So that shows adaptability that you've got for something that really is current. And you wouldn't have guessed, I bet, 2 years ago that you'd be dealing with an issue like that, because the industry has really grown so fast. And you're right, entrepreneurial opportunity, and you don't want to stifle that, but you do need to help the consumer out here, what you're doing. Another one that is really you're in your ballpark for long term. What you're doing in the energy and the environment now in this legislature is going to affect generations. You know, the Uber and Lyft situation will be a whole different issue another 2 years from now, perhaps. But as that industry changes, but the path that you will set and that you're working on right now in energy is a significant future situation for us. Do you think that there will be some compatibility with the House and Senate on where you need to go with renewables? And I know in my early years, it was all about let's get to natural gas. I think you're away from that a little bit more towards renewables.
Yeah.
I think we're in a good place there. I think there's a general very good agreement between the House, the Senate, and the governor that we've got to continue to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. The good news is we've already moved away from coal and from oil too, largely.
Yes.
But we're agreeing, I think, that we need to go after hydropower, and also Massachusetts has been described as the Saudi Arabia of wind. Offshore, you know, Cape Wind may not have worked out, but there are other new opportunities further offshore. And this legislation would open that up through a competitive bidding process, and the utilities would have to, you know, procure a certain amount of offshore wind, which is going to be a great opportunity for us, and also to create jobs in areas like New Bedford, Fall River, you know, along our coastal areas. Some of our it'll open up a lot, and a lot of innovation as well in terms of wind energy technology.
Yeah, and a lot more competitive bidding process, more transparency in the bidding process, as well as really making it competitive, which will help us curb our energy costs, right? I mean, our electricity costs, our energy costs continue to climb, especially in the Northeast. In this bill, we'll hopefully introduce a lot more competition. It will introduce a lot more competition once we get it signed, and bring in different industries. Solar is going to have a good increase in protection, not as much as we both wanted, but it's going to get there. I was pretty happy to get through an anaerobic digestion amendment that'll allow that industry to start growing. Anaerobic digestion is taking... It's not a pretty subject. It's taking waste, human waste, animal waste, food waste, and literally converting that into energy. So I had equated it to how the movie The Martian, he made potatoes, but also, you know, Back to the Future, you're dropping your banana peels into the car and off you go. We're not there yet, but this amendment will allow that industry to take off. So smaller farms, other facilities allow that to grow and contribute to the grid, right? To add energy in, but again, in a renewable manner. So it's accomplishing both lowering our energy costs as well as greening ourselves a little bit more to combat climate change. So I was particularly thrilled to get that through. Hopefully we can get it through to the finish line in the next few days as well.
That was great. That wouldn't be in the final bill if you hadn't offered that as a proposal during the debate. I
was happy with that one for sure.
That was great.
This is more progress. In the 1980s, waste to energy had to do with building trash plants to convert energy. Anaerobic waste to energy wasn't discussed, but this is progress.
It's not a fun subject to discuss, but luckily our colleagues went along with it. And
we only have a few minutes left. This goes so fast, but I thought maybe before we were done to really focus even more locally, commuter rail and what we're doing with our getting ready for the train station in Winchester that you both have been very, very involved in. And I know we're on schedule, I think, to get some state help there, and just your thoughts about how it's going.
I'll let Rep. Day share the exciting news.
Yeah,
for those
and great
who
news.
Haven't heard.
Great news on our end. We got the commitment. We got it into the capital improvement plan, the 5-year plan from the Mass DOT. $33 million, I think it was, commitment from the state to continue the rebuild and redesign of our commuter rail station. That, as we all know here, hasn't been touched since, you know, it was built pretty much. And so you've got great deterioration in the physical capacity of that, the platforms and the station itself. And we've been working very closely with members of the community in a subcommittee, working pretty much often, I'll say, on the redesign of this station. There's been great buy-in partnership with the DOT as well. But getting this funding put in, especially in a time when this is a huge upheaval in the MBTA and in the transportation sector itself, we were able to get that $33 million guaranteed, which is going to keep it on track. Hopefully have it groundbreaking next year. Right? And move it within 2 years to completion. The redesign, which we'll be presenting, it's at the 15% stage now, these kind of different steps. I think in the fall is when we're going to have some real concrete visuals for the public to be able to come down to Town Hall. I think we're going to do a public meeting and say, here's what the plan is. We want your feedback on what's going on here. but really exciting stuff to redesign and improve this station.
And I think it'll be great for the whole downtown area because it will continue to catalyze more business growth, more housing growth in the downtown area, which is exactly what Winchester wants.
It's exactly what the town is working on, and you've been so helpful with that. And of course, there's more to come. And I have to say, our time is up for today, but I hope we'll come back soon with another episode of In the State House. This is tremendously helpful to our citizens to be able to tune in on WinCam and catch up on this, because you've got so much going on. And I know there's more that you're going to be even doing this weekend, and we'll want to catch up with that when that's over too. So I want to thank everybody for viewing in today, and thank Senator Jason Lewis and Senator Michael Day, Representative Michael Day. Never know how these things take place over time. But thank you for being with us, and we'll see you again soon, gentlemen.
Thank you, Alan, very much.
Great.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Mike.
It's great.